Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation of a message that I received. The translation of that message reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? Can you please share my own story with your listeners? Sometimes life can become so hard, but when I think that I should have been dead and I was not supposed to see this day, I will always find myself thanking God. My brother, I survived death. This was after I had been attacked by a crocodile. And this crocodile, my brother, one might argue, especially those ones that think that here in Africa, if you believe in this thing of witchcraft, then it means that you are backward. They will say that it was just a natural crocodile, but this was not the case. This crocodile, it had been sent by one of my relatives, because soon after God had rescued me, this relative of mine, he was then attacked by a crocodile. How can it be a coincidence that soon after I had been attacked by a crocodile, after we had returned whatever he had sent to me, he was then attacked by a crocodile? My story in full details is that I am a man who is now aged 32 years old. I grew up in the farm there in Marondera, where my parents were working. Growing up in the farms, my brother, it came with its own challenges, because a lot of witchcraft was being used there at the compounds where we were staying. And worst of all, a lot of people that were staying on those farms, most of them, they came from different countries. Mostly they were coming from Malawi and Mozambique. So that is where most traditional healers were going to get their charms. Some of them would even come to that farm where we were staying in Marondera, because there was a man that was very powerful. This man had left his entire family there in Mozambique. This was after he had been accused of being part of those traditional healers that were harvesting body parts and using some charms. They would actually grind the bones after they would have dug up a freshly buried body. Then they would make sure that they remove all the flesh. Then they would grind the bones and they would make some charms. And we heard that these charms that they were using, they were they were very powerful. So this is the environment that I grew up in. As for my own father's brother, he was someone who hated me. Why he hated me like this when I was growing up, I didn't even understand. It was only after I had converted to Christianity, that was when I knew why my father's brother hated me like that. Like when my mother gave birth to me, I was named after my father's elder brother, because it was a sign of respect. But what my parents did not know is that my uncle then went and he then did some rituals whereby he was going to use me simply because I had his name. I shared the same name with him. He was the senior and I was the junior. For that, I had to suffer whilst he was making money. But my brother, soon after that crocodile attack, I can see that when God had decided to save my life, his own family right now is crumbling to the ground. His kids, even though they went to school in China, but they are all back in Zim. They are just struggling. They went to China simply because I was suffering, and their father had used me to make money for his rituals. After their father had passed away, then their businesses started going down, and they could not even afford to spend like the way that they used to spend. And when their father was still alive, he was the man whereby he hated his relatives, including me. Even when my father passed away, he never came to attend my father's funeral. And when I came here to South Africa, I think that the mistake that we do is when you have a relative that is very wealthy, even when you see that some of the things that he does, they are very suspicious, but you keep on thinking that he is the one who can assist you. This is what my own father did. By the time that I could no longer, by the time that I could not go to school anymore, and when I started working on the farm as well with my father said that I do not want you to keep on working on the farm. I want a better life for you. So my father went and he spoke with his brother. The money that I used to come here to South Africa, he had been given by his elder brother, and I suspect that the money that he was given by my uncle, it was ritual money, and this ritual money made me to suffer so much. When I came here to South Africa, each and every month, it was like thieves knew that I always had money. They would always find a way to rob me. When I would be on the taxi, I would either forget my phone or something that had a lot of value. If I would buy some groceries, somehow I would always forget something in the taxi. I lived this type of a life before I had turned to Christ. And when I spoke with this other man who was going to a Pentecostal church, he was from Zim, and we were staying at the same house. And when I kept on telling him about these misfortunes that I kept on having, and this man said that maybe if you come to church, maybe God is going to deliver you. Even on the day that I went to church, my brother, poverty had affected me so much, and the shoe that I was wearing at that time, I actually had to take a wire so as to tie that shoe because it had really broken down, and I could not afford to buy a brand new shoe with the way that things are cheap here in South Africa. I reached a stage in my life of poverty whereby even though I was working, but I could not even afford to buy a brand new pair of shoe. When I went to church, I found people praying, and when I decided to give life to Christ, then I was told that I should pray so that I can receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. So I started praying, and when I started praying, I can say that my life became so hard. It became so hard, my brother, that my own boss, he started beating me up. If I would have a little mistake, if I could do a little mistake at work, then my boss will beat me up, and there was no way I could run to, and I could not tell him that I do not want to work anymore because of the way that I was suffering. This man that I was working for, he had a garden service company, so sometimes when he would take me to one of the houses so that I can take care of the lawn and everything, then he would take some guys and he would leave them at different houses. So most of the white people that I was working for, they hated me. They would always complain to my boss, and my boss, then he would hit me. Sometimes he would slap me or kick me, but I kept on working, my brother, because I knew that if I stop working, then it means that I was going to suffer even more, and I would not be able to even pay the rent and buy food. So at that church where I was working, one day there was an elder who called me to his house. When I went to his house, he then asked me if I had been paying my tithe in time. I said that no, I have never paid my tithing in time, and with the money that I was earning at that time, I was only earning 1.2 a month. So I said, if I remove 120 rands, then what am I going to do? Because life was even difficult, but I didn't tell this to the elder. I was just thinking to myself as he was telling me about the importance of paying your tithes. So my brother, at the end of the month, he encouraged me to pay my tithing in time. I then went to the church treasury and I gave him my tithing, the 10%. And after that, my brother, I then found out that my life was becoming much better. As for my boss, he no longer hated me. Even when I would do a mistake at work, my boss, the way that he would respond, it was totally different. And then my uncle, he started sending me some messages, and these messages that he would send to me, he would just say, you are going to waste your time there in South Africa. Text messages like, why don't you come back home so that you can do something better with your life. So you mean that you want to be a garden boy for the rest of your life? So my brother, I kept on praying with the encouragement of that man that was staying at that place that I was staying at that time. It then happened that I said, let me return back home, and this was during the holidays. And when I returned back home during the Easter holidays, me and my younger brother, we said, let us go out, let us just go so that we can catch some fish. So we went to this other river, but at that river I didn't like it because when we were growing up, there were always like big snakes that were always hanging around the forest that was close to that river. But my brother said, come on, let's go. And I think that when the spirit of death is calling you, it will always find a way. So I then went there after he had told me that there was this other girl who was staying on the next farm that we were going to meet at that river. So we went there, my brother. When we arrived at that river, then he spoke with that girl whom he wanted me to marry. But this girl then said that she didn't have a chance to get out because her father was at home, so she was afraid of her dad. So we were supposed to go and see her. And so me and my brother, we sat down, and it was very hot. We said, let us just relax, we will go later on. So we were just sitting down, my brother. Then I felt that there was something that bit me on my leg, and it was quite painful and terrifying at the same time. That creature, my brother, and this crocodile started dragging me. The only thing that saved me was that my brother, he quickly realized what had happened. Then he started dragging me, and he called out to these other boys that were busy heading their own cattle. So these boys, they were always carrying their hunting weapons, and when they came to the place where this crocodile was trying to drag me into the river, they started throwing sticks as well as rocks and beating that crocodile. Then it left me. That is how I survived that crocodile attack. And my brother, even though I survived up until today, I can't even walk properly because of this crocodile attack. I was then taken to the hospital. When I was in hospital, I then saw my uncle, the one that I share the same name with, was just angry at me, and he then pointed at his leg. And when he pointed at his leg, I saw that he was shaking. There was even blood that was coming out of his shirt, and he was shaking. He then pointed at his leg, and I looked down, and I saw that there was a big crocodile that was busy chewing up on his leg. This dream, I had it when I was in the hospital. I told the church elder about this dream, and they promised me that they were going to keep on praying for me. After I had this attack, my brother, within a couple of days, that was when we received the sad news that my uncle had passed away. Him and his friends, they had gone out to have a good time at this other resort area, and whilst they were on a boat, it was said that our uncle then fell overboard into the water. They tried to look for him, and they could not find him. My brother, I stayed in the hospital for 2 months, 2 full months, whilst I was in the hospital. And whilst I was in the hospital, there was always something that was coming up that was making the hospital to stop the release of my uncle's body. He was kept in the mortuary for the 2 months that I stayed in the hospital. Only after I was released, when the doctor said that I was fine, that was when my uncle's body was released. And when he was released, I could not go to his funeral. At his burial, some of my relatives told me that my uncle's skin, the way that it was as if he had not been kept in the fridge, but it was like his skin had been kept underneath the water. It had changed color. It was pale in color, just like what happens when a dead body is kept in water for a very long time. And when this happened, I saw that indeed there is a God in heaven, for he saved me. My own uncle wanted to use me. He wanted to use my blood for his own rituals. Soon after his death, that was when his small empire started to crumble down to the ground. And now there is nothing. A man that was wealthy, he does not have anything. As for now, I heard that even his farm has been repossessed by this other military man who took over that farm. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to us by one of our dear brothers, and we had to give you this translation.